Fittingly, we're out at the tourist park today at the Waste Valley School, and I'll be reading from Roy Lee's The Old Timer. And as some of you may know that are watching this, I am a retired history teacher from Mondovi and also coach basketball. As a history teacher, I am best known for telling a car story. Most students forget what I taught, or if I ever taught them anything, but they do remember that car story. And so when I was looking for something to present today, I chose an article from December 15, 1977 on both basketball and a car. Basketball was invented by a Canadian. The first public game was played March 11th in 1892. Mondovi High School started playing basketball in 1908. Some of the first players were John Berg, John Dillon, Harry Merritt, Lawrence Solberg, and Alan Whelan. The next year, the girls formed a team with Elsie Holcomb, Vera Howard, Golden and Gladys Ward, Etta Johnson, and Millicent Fuller. Mondovi has had some excellent teams and has sent several teams to the district tournaments and 2 teams to the state tournaments. Mondovi organized its first city team in 1914. This team was composed mostly of former high school players such as Edgar and Art Farrington, Merle Claflin, Lawrence Solberg, Milton Bond, and Paul Walker. All of their home games were played in the old Joe Canar Hall over the city furniture store. John Berg, our local druggist, was manager of the team. He kept track of all finances and arranged all the games. A game was scheduled with Arcadia for February 22nd, 1915. There was lots of snow at that time of the year, and the roads were not plowed out like they are today. They hunted around for someone to drive them over in such cold weather, and they found a garage owner, Jim Blum, who was willing to take them. Sig Grorud, who had stored his car in Jim's garage for the winter, and that was the only car large enough to carry all of them and the driver. Now, Jim knew he had no right to take that car, but he figured that Sig would never know, and besides, he'd make a few bucks, and business was very slow at that time of the year, as very few cars were running in the winter. The boys started out in high spirits, and everything went okay going over to Arcadia. They arrived about 6 p.m., and after eating a light lunch, they were ready to play. It was a hard-fought battle with the referee favoring Arcadia, don't they always? But Mondovi finally won by 2 points. It had been snowing during the evening, and the roads had become very slippery. Jim was an excellent driver. It was all he could do to keep the car on the road. He finally made it to Independence, where they stopped to rest and have a cup of coffee. Once more, they started homeward, and about 4 miles out, the car jackknifed and finally landed in a ditch, right side up, luckily. The boys got out and tried to push it back up onto the road, but it was much too heavy. Now they had a problem, what to do, as it was close to midnight, and not a farm light was to be seen, or not a chance of a car driving past. So they picked up their basketball gear and started walking. It was not long before they saw a farmhouse a short distance off the main road. After some discussion, they decided to go over and get the farmer out of bed to let them in, for it was mighty cold standing out the road. It took a lot of pounding on the back door before a light appeared, and then the farmer, in his long underwear, answered the door. The boys explained their predicament, so he let them come into the kitchen, but he said he wouldn't help them get the car out until morning. There was plenty of wood, so they kept the kitchen stove hot until morning. Promptly, at 5 o'clock, the farmer was ready to do the chores. Some of the boys went out to the barn to help, and soon the farmer's wife started breakfast. She mixed up a big bowl of pancakes, and everyone filled up on pancakes and sausage. After breakfast, the farmer hitched up the team, and everyone went out to pull the car out of the ditch. Art carried a log chain to fasten it onto the car bumper, and after a great deal of trouble with the team pulling and the boys pushing, the car finally landed in the road. They were all so relieved that they all chipped in and gave the farmer $5, which was big money in those days. Jim opened a box of car chains and said if they wanted to get home, they had better put them on. So after getting their hands very cold, they finally got in the car and started for home once more. With careful driving, they reached the Russell store, and suddenly a loud clanging and banging stopped them again. One of the chains had broken, so they had to get out and jack up the car to get the chain off the wheel. That must have taken at least an hour, and their hands were freezing. Once more, they were on their way towards Lookout. Little did they realize that there was more trouble ahead. They started up the hill, and they could see that it was slippery. So Jim speeded up the car as much as he dared, and they made it about halfway up the hill, and then the car jackknifed, and they went sliding down the hill sideways, finally landing into a ditch. This time the car toppled over on its side. They managed to get one door open, and everyone got out safely. Now Jim was about crying. How was he going to get Sig's car home, and what was he going to tell Sig? Once more they picked up their gear and started walking. A farmer came along with a sleigh. It was one of the cook boys who live out near Lookout. They piled in the sleigh and rode to the Lookout store. They were mighty thankful, for they were all exhausted and cold. They gathered around a small box stove to warm their nearly frozen feet, hands, and ears. Jim decided to call Tom Litchfield to come get them. Tom ran the Mondovi livery stable. He agreed to come as soon as possible. Mr. Lindbergh, the storekeeper, made coffee, and they bought cheese and crackers, and they sat around the store until they got warm. Tom came with the team and sleigh about 8 o'clock in the evening, but he told them that it would only go as far as Gilmanton that night, for he had made quite a trip and was tired. They drove to Gilmanton, and Tom found places for them to sleep. They were so tired they went to bed with all their clothes on except for their shoes. The next morning they had breakfast at a local restaurant and started home at 9 o'clock. They were glad to see Mondovi with all of its snowbanks and busy folk hustling along the streets. The boys were busy telling about their high adventure in the dead of winter, and I'm sure they never forgot it. Jim got the car home in a few days, wasn't damaged much, and it was put back in storage where it stayed until spring. This all happened 63 years ago, and is a true story. There are only 3 of these players living today, and at that time Paul Walker was responsible for the article. Tune in again to hear more Mondovi history.